Welcome, my friends. Thank you for joining me. Let's begin. Do you see these signs that God is listening? There comes a moment in every soul's journey when the night feels too long, the silence too heavy, the waiting too cruel. You pray, and nothing moves. You cry out, and heaven seems still. You beg for an answer, and all you get is time. It's in those moments, in the deafening quiet, in the long stretch of not yet, that the question creeps in, is God even listening? You wouldn't dare say it out loud in a sanctuary. You wouldn't write it down in your journal. But it lingers, just behind your worship, just beneath your obedience, like a whisper from the shadows. What if he doesn't hear me? And yet, what if he does? What if the silence isn't absence, but strategy? What if the delay isn't denial, but development? What if God isn't ignoring your voice, but tuning your ear to hear his? Because here's the truth. He listens differently than we expect. We want thunder. We want lightning. We want instant explosive confirmation. But God's voice often moves like a seed, quiet, buried, slow to surface, but unstoppable once it takes root. And if you've been praying in the dark, if you've been crying without answers, if your heart has been heavy with holy questions, and then listen closely, because there are signs, clear, unmistakable signs, that the Almighty is not just watching you, he is listening. You just have to know what to look for. You'll know God is listening when he starts answering in ways you didn't expect. You asked for comfort, but instead, he gave you clarity. You prayed for the storm to stop, but he gave you the strength to walk on water. You asked him to take away the burden, and instead he gave you shoulders broad enough to carry it. This is the first sign. God doesn't always answer with relief. Sometimes he answers with refinement. And that's how you know he's listening, because his answer reaches deeper than your words. You prayed with your mouth, but he responded to your soul. He heard the groanings you couldn't put into sentences, the ache beneath your ambition, the fear behind your faith, the desperation behind your discipline. You wanted a door to open. He wanted your heart to be healed. You asked for success. He taught you surrender. You asked for peace. He pulled you out of people-pleasing and into purpose. See, when God listens, he doesn't respond to your surface. He responds to your spirit. And it's in those moments when everything around you is silent, but everything inside you starts shifting, that you know, he heard me. Not the version of me I show the world, not the curated Christian, not the filtered voice I put in my morning prayers. He heard the version of me I try to hide, and he still stayed, because God listens in love, and love doesn't flinch at brokenness. This is why the signs that he's listening aren't always external miracles. They're internal movements. Suddenly, your desires start to change. The same habits that used to comfort you now convict you. The same prayers that once felt rehearsed now wreck you. You begin to crave truth. You begin to crave holiness. You begin to crave him. That's not emotion. That's evidence. That's the Holy Spirit rearranging your interior world, not because God heard what you said, but because he heard what you meant. And when your spiritual cravings start to shift, it's not a phase, it's not a coincidence, it's not maturity for maturity's sake, it's heaven's reply, it's the echo of divine attention, it's the evidence that the potter has picked up the clay and he's not finished forming you yet. So don't panic when the blessings take longer than expected. Don't doubt when the healing feels slow. Don't walk away when the answer looks different than what you imagined. God is not on mute. He's on mission. And the most dangerous thing you can do in the silence of your waiting is assume that silence means abandonment, because God's silence is never empty. It's heavy with intention. It's loaded with precision. And it often means that the next chapter is so holy, so vital, so weighty, that he is preparing your spirit to handle what your words couldn't even request. So, the next time you wonder if God is listening, don't look at how loud he answers. Look at how deep he works. The shifting of your soul is a louder answer than any door he could open, or he could. Another sign that God is listening, he starts removing what you thought you needed. You asked him to bless your plans, and he shut them down. You prayed for that person to stay, and they walked away. You begged for the opportunity to go through, and the door slammed shut right in your face. At first, you thought you were being punished, abandoned, ignored. But now you look back, and you realize that closed door was mercy. That rejection was protection. That delay was divine. Because you weren't just asking for comfort. You were crying out for alignment. And when God listens, he responds to your destiny, not your temporary disappointment. He's not in the business of blessing idols. He won't crown what he intends to crucify. He won't say yes to what would have derailed your soul. So instead of just giving you what you wanted, he started taking away what you couldn't see was killing you. That toxic relationship, gone. That secret sin, exposed. That fragile identity built on validation and applause, shattered. Not to destroy you, but to rebuild you right. This is how God listens. Not as a genie who grants your wishes, but as a father who shapes your future. He prunes what doesn't bear fruit. He purifies what's unclean. He breaks what is fake so he can bless what is real. And if you're in the middle of the breaking right now, hear me. He's still listening. Not only that, he's acting. It just doesn't look like favor yet. It looks like fire. But fire in the hands of God is not destruction. It's refinement. And when everything starts falling away, your attachments, your crutches, your comfort zones, you can be sure of this. You didn't lose it. God removed it. Because you were asking him to use you, to lead you, to bless you. But you cannot walk in the power of heaven with the distractions of hell still clinging to your ankles. So yes, that disappointment, it was an answer. That heartbreak, it was a reply. That moment you said, God, do whatever it takes, he took you at your word. That's how you know he heard you. He doesn't just give what's easy. He gives what's eternal. And if you're still holding on to something he's been trying to remove, that's not just resistance. That's the refusal to recognize that your prayer already came true, just not the way you wanted. So don't miss the miracle because it was wrapped in mourning. Don't miss the yes because it came disguised as not this. God listens, God responds, and sometimes his greatest answers start with a holy no. You'll also know God is listening when he starts giving you strength you didn't ask for. You thought the answer would be a way out, but instead, he gave you the endurance to stay in. You wanted him to rescue you from the fire, but he made you fireproof. You wanted the pain to stop, but he gave you a peace that didn't make sense in the middle of it. This is how God listens. He doesn't just remove obstacles. He turns you into someone who walks through them. You see, when he hears your cry, he doesn't always change your circumstance, he changes you, and you don't notice it right away. But slowly, in the quiet battles no one sees, you begin to realize, I didn't break this time. I didn't run this time. I didn't go back to what he delivered me from. That's not your willpower. That's not coincidence. That's not maturity alone. That's divine strength being poured into your spirit. That's an invisible God responding with invisible power. Power that doesn't always change the weather, but changes the way you walk through the storm. And that's the mark of a spiritual warrior. Not that everything's easy, but that you have a grace now to stand when you would have crumbled, to love when you have every reason to hate, to move forward when quitting would have been easier. That's how you know God heard you, because you've been walking through hell, but there's still heaven in your voice. You've been tested, but you didn't become bitter. You've been stretched, but your faith didn't tear. You don't just believe in God anymore. You know Him, and that kind of knowing only comes from going through something. Only the people who've been to the edge and didn't fall, who've been in the desert and still found water, who've been in the fire and still found purpose, only they can say, "Oh, He heard me because I made it." I don't mean I succeeded. I mean I survived. The nights of unanswered questions, the prayers that turned into tears, the moments I screamed, "Why?" and still got up the next day with praise on my lips. You don't fake that kind of strength. You don't manufacture that kind of faith. That's what it looks like when God listens and answers with endurance. He gave you more than a miracle. He gave you spiritual muscles. He gave you resilience. He gave you vision. He gave you clarity. Not because you asked for it directly, but because He knew what you need to carry what's coming. That's the proof. Because if He didn't hear you, you'd be broken by now, defeated by now, gone by now. But you're not. You're still standing, still believing, still growing, because God was listening, and He responded with power. Another sign that God is listening, He gives you the clarity to see what you couldn't before. You've been asking for direction, but all you've been getting is fog. You've been praying for understanding, but everything feels murky. You've been searching for the answers, but they seem to be just out of reach. But don't be discouraged. The clarity you need doesn't always come all at once. It comes in pieces. Sometimes God's answers aren't loud and obvious. They're quiet whispers in your soul, gently pulling you toward what you've been avoiding. They're subtle shifts in your heart, leading you to places you never thought to go. You asked for a breakthrough, and God gave you a better perspective. You prayed for change, and God gave you the courage to make it. You begged for answers, and God gave you the insight to stop asking the wrong questions. That's how you know God is listening, because His answers don't always match the way you expect them. We all want the big bang, the sudden rush of revelation that makes everything clear. But sometimes His wisdom comes as a series of gentle nudges. One day, you're sitting in silence, and suddenly you understand why something didn't work out the way you wanted. Or you realize that the person you were holding on to wasn't meant for your future. Or you finally see the door that's been standing wide open, but you were too afraid to walk through it. Clarity comes when you stop forcing your own agenda, when you surrender your need to control every outcome. And when you stop demanding answers in your timing, you start recognizing the signs He's been sending all along. He's been guiding you all this time, just not in the way you expected. That clarity is a gift from heaven. It's a sign that God has been listening to your prayers, even when you didn't understand the why. And once you embrace it, you will see that every step you've taken, every moment of confusion, every time you thought you were lost, has been part of His grand design. So, don't be disheartened in the seasons of uncertainty. When everything feels like it's up in the air, trust that God is positioning you to see clearly when the time is right. If you've been seeking answers, take heart, because the clarity you're longing for is closer than you think. God listens to the cry of your heart, and He will never leave you wandering without direction. The next time you're standing in confusion, just remember, His answers come in the quiet. His wisdom comes in the stillness, and His direction is always on time. Another powerful sign that God is listening, He opens doors that you couldn't open yourself. You've been knocking, and no one answered. You've been praying, asking God to move, desperate for a breakthrough. You've done everything right. You've worked hard. You've stayed faithful. You've trusted Him in the dark. But the door stays shut. The opportunity seems blocked. The path seems too narrow. And in the waiting, you start to wonder, is He even listening? But here's the truth you need to hear today. God opens doors you cannot open, and He closes doors you cannot close. And sometimes the delay isn't rejection. It's preparation. You see, the reason the door hasn't opened yet isn't because God doesn't hear you. It's because He's preparing you for the right moment. You may not see it, but He's been working in ways you can't understand, setting things in motion, aligning people and circumstances that will make that door swing wide open. And when He opens it, you'll know it was Him. There will be no question. There will be no doubt, because the timing will be perfect. The opportunity will be undeniable. And the door will open with ease, as though it was meant to be all along. God listens when you cry out for opportunity, and when the time is right, He will move in ways that will blow your mind. He doesn't open doors when you want them. He opens them when you're ready, and in the process, He builds your trust. He strengthens your faith. He teaches you patience. And when that door finally opens, it will be the answer you've been waiting for, but it will also be the one you didn't know you needed. Because God's timing is always better than our own. And when you see that door swing open before you, you will realize He's been listening this entire time. Another unmistakable sign that God is listening. He moves in your heart before He moves in your circumstances. You've been waiting for God to change your surroundings, to move the mountains in front of you. You've been asking for breakthrough, and yet it seems like nothing around you is shifting. But here's something you need to understand. Sometimes before God moves in your environment, He moves in you. He doesn't just change the world around you. He transforms the world within you. You've been asking for peace, but you've been receiving patience. You've been asking for relief, but you've been given resilience. And at first, it feels frustrating. You're praying for God to fix the situation, but instead, He's fixing your heart. You want a miracle, but He's working a transformation. You want to see change in the world, but He's showing you where you need to change first. God doesn't just fix your circumstances. He prepares you for the purpose behind those circumstances. He doesn't just answer with external solutions. He answers by reshaping the very things you thought were impossible. You asked for a new job, but He started preparing you for the impact you'll make there. You asked for more money, but He started teaching you the value of stewardship. You asked for more friends, but He began showing you how to be a better friend. God's movement isn't always loud, but it's always profound. Before He changes your world, He changes your heart, and that's a sign He's listening. And when you begin to notice your own growth, when you realize that you've been learning patience you never had, when you recognize that you've developed courage in places you used to cower, that's when you realize God didn't ignore you. He was preparing you. He didn't say no to your request. He said, wait, I have a better plan for you. He didn't reject your prayer, and He said, I will work in your heart. And when the time is right, you'll see what I've been doing in you all along. The change you're waiting for is already happening. It's happening in you. You're being equipped to handle what's ahead, to carry the blessing you've been asking for, to hold the responsibility you've been longing for. That's a sign God is listening. That's a sign God is moving. He's not always moving the mountains in front of you, but He is always moving in the depths of your soul. And when that transformation is complete, you'll find that you are stronger, braver, wiser than you ever thought possible. Because God didn't just listen to your request, He listened to your heart. And finally, The greatest sign that God is listening, He speaks directly into your soul when you need it most. You've been searching for His voice, asking for direction, crying out for something, anything, that will reassure you that He's still there, still near, still present. And sometimes it feels like the silence is deafening. You've prayed for answers, but all you've gotten is quiet. You've begged for guidance, but all you've heard is the echo of your own thoughts. But here's the truth. Sometimes God speaks in ways that bypass your understanding. He speaks to your spirit before He speaks to your mind. He doesn't always answer your prayers with words. Sometimes He answers them with peace. Sometimes He answers them with conviction. Sometimes He answers them with a deep, undeniable knowing. And when God speaks into your soul, it's not always in the way you expect. It's not always in a booming voice from the sky. It's not always in the thunder or the lightning. Sometimes He speaks in the stillness, in the gentle whisper. Sometimes He speaks in the nudge of your conscience. Sometimes He speaks through a memory that suddenly becomes clear, through a thought that pierces your heart. And when He does, you will know. You will know it's Him. You will feel His presence. You will sense His call. You won't need to ask, "Is this God?" Because the answer will be written in your spirit. That moment of clarity you can't explain. That peace in the middle of the storm. That direction that doesn't make sense to anyone else, but it clicks in your soul. That's God's answer. That's the proof He's listening. It's not always immediate. It's not always loud. But His voice is always there, always near, always speaking, if you're listening with more than your ears. You see, God isn't distant. He isn't far away. He's right here, closer than your breath, waiting to guide you, to speak to you, to reassure you that He is listening and He is with you. So, the next time you feel alone, the next time you feel unheard, remember this: God's silence is not His absence. His stillness is not His neglect. He is listening, He is working, and He is speaking, if you're willing to hear Him with the ears of your heart. When God listens, it's not always on your timeline. It's not always in the way you think. But make no mistake, God is listening, God is responding, and He is always, always moving in your life. Trust in that. Hold on to that. Let that truth sink deep into your soul. And remember, when you see these signs, you will know that He's always been listening. Even in the moments of silence, even in the times when you couldn't see it, even in the darkness that seemed to overwhelm you, He's listening. And He's always been working because He loves you. Thank you for joining me today. Please like and subscribe and comment below. We would love to know if this helped you in any way. May the Spirit of God be with you.